Hi, and welcome to It's Giving Realty podcast, the podcast that gives you the realty in real estate. I am so elated to be joining you all again today, and I have an expert with me. So, I've been trying to give you all the details that is real estate, everything from ownership to credit repair to how much you need to save up, loan types, etc. Where there's one specific topic that we don't talk about enough, and that is how you actually own a house, like what's the paperwork involved. And that's why I called an expert because I can't tell you everything. Sometimes you need somebody else to give you the good news. Okay, so I have with me today the owner of Infinity Title Company, Mr. Jay Daniels. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Miss Stylist. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well.
Great to see you, as always.
How you feel about your intro? Did I do like?
You gave me a little bit too much credit. I don't know about an expert, but I know a few things.
Here we go. We about to be humble. Okay.
Hey, I
All
try.
right. You know a good bit of a lot of bit of a lot of bit.
I'll take
Okay.
it. I'll
All
take
right.
it. I'll take
So
it.
because you do, we're going to get right into it. So a lot of times, if you don't know, if you're just tuning in, I am a real estate agent. And a lot of times when I have buyers, sometimes even sellers, they don't know a lot about like the paperwork involved in owning a property or land, because real estate is land, commercial building. It's not just, your home, right? And so I thought it would be really important to have someone like you on the show to kind of break down what that looks like. Like, what is a title?
So, first of all, thanks
Hmm.
again for having me.
You're welcome.
It is an absolute pleasure to be with you and your listeners. Um, what is title is often I think it's a great question, first of all, but I
Okay.
think it's also an often misunderstood deal, right?
Agreed.
When we think about title, we think about a sheet of paper, we think about a document, right? We think about when we buy a car, right? We take out a loan, and then after we pay that loan back, the Office of Motor Vehicle sends us that
Hmm.
title, right?
Yeah.
But it's a little different in a real estate context, right? Because in real estate, what title is essentially a a legal concept, right?
Okay.
It is your right to own, to possess, to sell, to
Hmm.
alienate a thing, um, and sort of the potential encumbrances or threats to your ability to do those things.
Okay.
So it's more conceptual than it is actually something that's physical and tangible.
I've never actually, I guess because I'm trying to explain it in layman's terms, I've never thought to articulate it in that way, even though that's what it functions as, right? But I think because people are so tangible, I'm like, yeah, like a title deed, you sign it over and this is how you own the property, but it is something that protects. So that's kind of interesting how you say that.
Yeah. So when we're one of the classic things we get right when we at the closing table,
Hmm.
the first question that someone asks, "Hey, before I sign this big stack of paper you have
Hmm.
right here, when am I gonna get the title
Yeah.
to my property?" And what I often have to explain is, "Hey, the moment that your deed is recorded, right, you are added to the title to that property. That it
Hmm.
is now your property. It's not something that the mortgage company sends you after you satisfy the
Right.
terms of your mortgage. You have a title interest in the property at the time that the seller conveys it to
Amazing. Amazing. I'm not trying to be funny. It is because again, that is said a lot when we close, and I don't even think to correct them if I'm being transparent because it's like you get the gist of it. I'll just leave it alone, right? But that's the first thing they say is, okay, so when do I get my title? When do I get my title? And in essence, once you own it, you own it. It's the idea of that more than a piece of paper.
you. And I think what so we sort of relate just about anything, right, to the things
Hmm.
that we know and that we're comfortable with,
Yeah.
right? Like I just paid off a truck. The,
Congratulations.
Appreciate that. But when the DMV sent me my you know title, right,
Hmm.
without the finances stamp on it
Hmm.
anymore, I was like, you know what, this is exactly what people are thinking
Yeah.
about when they ask me for their title.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's so many other entities that use it in that same way, and it's under the same term. So obviously, that's what it is. But real estate is so different in a lot of ways that it's important to have someone like you break that down because you could miss a point.
You can miss a
Yeah,
lot of points, and even folks who would willingly proclaim themselves to be experts, unlike me, um,
there's a lot of people
they
that's willing.
they make mistakes, right?
Hmm.
And that sort of underscores sort of an important aspect and role of title attorneys and title companies, right?
Mhm.
Because mistakes happen sometimes, right? And that is why you need to make sure that you are working with closing with an attorney who sort of understands that and who has the breadth of knowledge to ensure that common mistakes, right,
Mhm.
are sought after. And in the event that it's an uncommon mistake, right, you have your title insurance to protect you.
That's why I bring all my files to Infinity Title, and
And
you should
Infinity
too.
appreciates
Yeah,
that.
no problem. No problem. No problem. Let me ask you, what made you decide that this is the type of work you wanted to do?
So I don't want to say I fell into it, right? But
So you
when
stumbled? No.
more like trip.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
when I finished law school, I became a criminal defense attorney, right? I loved being in court. I loved being in front of a jury. I loved fighting for folks. Um, pushing paperwork, as I described it then,
Mhm.
was never in the cards for me.
Okay.
But then I had babies,
Mhm.
and I didn't want my wife to be rearing our children while I'm running around somebody's
Yeah.
courthouse at all times. I wanted to be an active parent, so I needed a little bit more control over
Mhm.
my schedule. And I had a couple friends who were realtors who I had done some title clearing work
Okay.
for successions, and they were like, "Hey Jay, it's not a lot of people who look like you, who sort of um, move in the fashion that you
Mhm.
do, who do this work. You might be good at this." And I put it off for a few years. It's like, whatever,
Mhm.
I'm doing well in my present arena.
Right. Right.
Um, but once my youngest was born, that was when I really started to sort of entertain the idea
Mhm.
of shifting gears. So I got licensed in 2018. Started closing files at Infinity in 2019, and here
The
we
rest
are.
is history, and we
Yeah,
in 2025.
don't say that. That
So,
reminds me, I'm getting older and stuff.
well, okay. No offense to any other listeners, but I hear black don't crack.
All right.
So I hear don't chip, don't bend, don't break. So you should be all
I
right.
think we'll be okay.
Okay. So I want to say, for me at least, and I didn't know when you started in Infinity. I think I had a file that closed over there, and I had a client that just was not well versed in real estate at all. And I had answered all of, like, I had my lender answering lender questions. I was answering questions about, like, home warranties and home insurance. And when we did the closing, they questioned every piece of paper that you slid in front of them. And for me, I knew I was bringing every file back there because you were willing to explain, and you were kind of like, after you explain, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Because I can, reiterate it in another way. And I will never forget that, because when you do something often, it's kind of like, duh, this is what I do, right? But when it's somebody that's new, I want them to feel comfortable too. And there are some things I'm not equipped to answer. It's not that I don't know, but maybe I don't know how to articulate it in a way that you could. And so when they ask the questions, I've been at other title companies, they'll remain nameless, where it was, you could tell there was a rush to get to the next closing, and my clients did not feel equipped or understood. It's almost like hundreds of paper. The stack is this
No,
thick.
it is hundreds of pages. Like I would say, on average, the size of a loan pack is probably about 100 pages,
Yeah.
right? And so I always say I am a title outsider, right? Like
Mhm.
I was not trained in a title company.
Mhm.
I didn't have any formal title sponsors or anything like that, right? I kind of learned by doing, and there's some benefits to that, right? Because I can relate to a lot of our buyers based on sort of my home buying
Mhm.
experience, right? And one of the things that I remember about my home buying experience is the guy. I was a lawyer at this point, right? So I
Mhm.
had already read some things and understood what I was signing, but the the signer, he just was sliding papers and
Yeah.
just saying, hey, sign this. And when I started closing files, I made it a point, like nobody's going to ever sit at my table
Mhm.
and have me slide them something and they don't at least have some
Yeah.
idea of what they're signing. Because at the end of the day, right, in the vast majority of the files that we sign, we're making a 30-year
Yeah.
commitment, right? And I would not sign something for a 30-year commitment unless I understood at least
what
somewhat
it
what I was
entails.
signing.
Yeah.
So I think that has always been important to me as I've done this. Hey, I want you to understand what you're
Mm-hmm.
signing, and if you don't understand it, ask me a question, right? Because I'm never in so much of a rush that I can't explain it. And um, I'll say it this way: I am a fairly plain-spoken attorney, right? So I can, you know, I talk like most of the folks who come and sit at the
Mm-hmm.
table with me. I think like some of them.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but I think like some of them. So I think, um, although they get to me late in the process,
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the strengths that we have at Infinity is being able to sort of engender a trust at the table to let them know that, hey, this title attorney isn't gone. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just throw me out to the wolves,
Yeah.
have me sign just to get on to the next spot.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. Seriously. Your closings are the only ones because sometimes if I'm working with a buyer and a seller, like if it's a succession or whatever, we have to close at a different title company. I'm usually stalking them. Let me see that. Let me see that because sometimes they won't even send me the CD, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
see what they're signing. I want to make sure I understand. But when I'm closing with you, I sit back and take pictures because I know that they're being taken care of.
Look,
Sometimes I bring food.
and bring snacks, all kind of contraband into the office. Um,
because I know I don't have to worry about, you know what
yeah,
I mean? I can just like my work is done. And I know at the closing you're gonna go through everything, and I only butt in, to say, well, you don't have to worry about that because of this, or because of that. So I appreciate that from you. So I want to get into because I know you said like you have to clear. You were doing work for realtor friends and
hmm
clearing title. What does it entail to tell a buyer this title is clear and free?
So I think one of the misnomers as it relates to the title world, right? We think about uh, clear title, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that there are no impediments, it's squeaky clean, right? And I think title attorneys and title underwriters, right? We think in terms of insurability, right?
Okay.
Whether or not we are going to risk uh, a title insurance policy on potential threats that may exist on title, right?
Okay.
I always tell folks, hey, I'm not looking for perfect title. I'm just looking for insurable title, right? And
Okay.
some of the things that may impact the insurability of title, if there are, judgments on an owner's
Mm-hmm.
name, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be the present owner of the property. It can be an older owner, right? That, you know, two chains ago, um, if there are multiple transactions
Mm-hmm.
within a 10-year time frame, right? Two chains ago, two links in the chain of title, that owner had a judgment for an unpaid loan or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, right? That could potentially be a threat to insurability. Um, we look for, particularly for succession properties, to ensure that the succession process itself
Mm-hmm.
has been performed in accordance with law. And my title insurance underwriting counsel, he and I joke all the time. Well, my chief one, I should say, we joke all the time about the fact that just because an attorney can handle a succession doesn't mean that he can handle a succession in order to ensure that title is insurable, right? Because a lot of times folks will just do what they have to do to get the usher the paperwork through the court and get a signed judgment
Yeah, but then they can't sell it because it wasn't done
because it
correctly.
wasn't done correctly, right? And it's never fun, right, to be the title attorney to tell a seller, hey, when this succession was done, this was not done properly. We've
Mm-hmm.
got some curative work to do. Um, I think the sort of the chief thing, right, is just to ensure, right, that whatever potential threats to your claim of ownership, right, your ownership, we can either avoid it completely, right,
Mm-hmm.
or mitigate it, right. It is all just like in any insurance industry. It's all about risk mitigation, right.
Okay.
And so when we're reviewing title, it is just to ensure not just my risk, right?
Right.
Because I've got an E&O policy, and if push comes to shove, like um,
I'm
file a
covered.
claim,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be okay, right?
Yeah.
But that'll never, ever, ever, right? there's no insurance against sort of the frustration and the hassle that a buyer might find themselves having to deal with when they spent 5 years, 10 years in the home, making memories with their families and their loved ones, right? And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden they got to deal with the headache of something that happened that they had no idea about, had nothing to
Right.
do with them, right? So it is much more about mitigating potential risk for our buyers than it is for just the attorney or the company.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing about it is when you buy a property, you think you're going to be in it forever, but as we know, things happen, life happens, storms, hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're here in New Orleans, and you end up saying, oh, "Okay, you know what? I'm gonna move and go elsewhere, and I want to sell this property," and then now you can't even sell your, especially if you didn't get a title company that did the real work, which is why I think it's so important for people to understand whether if you understand that it's not just the paperwork or you understand that it means that it's clear, it's important that it is something that you are able to insure so that you can sell it, or you end up kind of back against the wall. I had an investor client who bought a property, they rehabbed it and wanted to sell it, and they could not sell it until they got the previous tenants to agree to release them, because when it was owned before, the tenant who was owning it wanted to purchase it, and the owner at the time was like, "Oh, you could, rent to buy, blah
Yep.
blah," and so they recorded their lease.
With the lease to own option in it,
Yes.
and that
And
that
they didn't, I mean, the tenants didn't pay the rent on time, didn't stick to any of the plans, but it did not matter because they had paperwork on it. And we found this house. The house was $55,000. They put 80 in. It was selling for 320. So they're ready to,
they ready to win.
yes, they're ready to win. And now we are literally negotiating with tenants who didn't pay rent. Can we please sell this property? What will it take for you to sign off on it? And it had to be paid off. So they got a payday for a house they didn't need, and it's all because they
Lived
were
for
rushing
free
through
and
it,
made some money.
lived for free and made some money, and it's all because they were my clients who purchased it did not do the due diligence prior to, and I advised. Now at this time they had everything in house, like because they do flip, they do this, they do that, and people start doing stuff, they get really comfortable and they start removing people thinking, oh, I see how that works, I could do that, I could do
Mm-hmm.
this, and I'm gonna say get a professional. Sometimes you get what you pay for, and where they were trying to move quickly and kind of not have to pay this, that, and the third, it bit us in the butt on the long end,
Yeah.
you know. So it's very important to get a title company that knows what they're doing, that makes sure your title is at least insurable. Because what I will say is they did listen to me about getting title insurance, and so the insurance is the ones that paid
Yeah.
out the previous tenants.
Yeah.
So when people say I don't want insurance for this, I don't want everything can be covered.
So one of the things, right, and I think, and that sort of underscores a primary role of a title company, right? I
Mm-hmm.
like to describe the role of a title company as essentially the settlement hub, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
sort of the go-between between buyers, sellers, lenders. So it isn't just about processing
Mm-hmm.
paperwork, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is ensuring that all parties to a transaction are sort of on the same page about like what has to happen
Mm-hmm.
in order to bring a particular transaction to a close. And um, you know, we've talked about insurability a bunch, right? But title companies, right? I don't want to say where title companies make that money at, right? Is the actual issuance of the title insurance
Mm-hmm.
policies. And in a technical sense, in a legal sense, I'm supposed to tell my buyers, right, hey, owner's title insurance, the thing that protects your, hundreds of thousands
Mm-hmm.
of dollars of investment is optional. A
Yeah.
lender's title insurance policy is not optional,
Right.
right? Because in 99% of the transactions, your lender will require you to purchase for them um, lender's title
Mm-hmm.
insurance, right? And if it's important enough for a lender to mandate it, right, then I think one of the things I always tell folks is, well, you need to investigate, right? Why is it optional for you? If it's not
For
optional
them.
enough for the lender, right, then it should not be optional for
Mm-hmm.
you. It's a one-time premium payment, right? It's not like your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance where you're paying it all the time.
Right.
You pay it one time, and it protects you and your heirs for as long as you all own the property.
Yeah.
And in most of most transactions, we're talking about a few $100s, right? And I
Yeah.
think sort of that peace of mind is worth what frankly is a minimal investment.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because if my investors had not bought title insurance, we would not have sold a house. Then
Yeah,
they would have, I don't know, maybe rented it out. I don't even know.
they wouldn't have had a choice,
They
right?
wouldn't have had a
They
choice.
wouldn't have had a
They would
choice.
not, because I think people are often counting cents and losing hundreds and thousands as a result. Like you didn't want to spend pennies, and now it's costing you so much more.
Yeah,
So,
and we talked about how sort of this is a 30-year commitment, right?
mm-hmm.
And I think we've got to sort of do the cost analysis of $200, $300
Yeah,
in 2025 versus losing uh, everything that you worked hard for 15 years from
yeah,
now, right? That is not, you know, I always tell folks like, look, I'm gonna do my job in terms of reviewing the title, right?
mm-hmm.
Like, there will be no obvious error that exists on a chain of title that I'm
Right,
gonna allow you to buy, right? But what you pay title insurance for is for those latent things, right?
mm-hmm.
Forged document, right? Somebody missed something in the succession, and now there's an error that's popping up saying, "Hey,
This is
they
my daddy
sold this
house.
from under
Right.
me," right? Things that you as a buyer, right, and even me as a title examiner, um, might not necessarily be able to foresee.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that one-time premium payment is definitely
Is
worth it.
necessary. And I think a valid point you made is because lender title insurance, you say 99, I've never not seen them require it, right? So it's a mandate, but the buyers isn't. And that's a valid point. So if they're requiring it, why wouldn't you? And they
Yeah,
have hundreds of thousands of dollars in their company. You don't have
they
that
can
as an
afford they
individual.
can afford to absorb the loss. You
Exactly.
can't.
They can afford it
You
and they're
can't.
still requiring lenders
Yeah,
insurance. So yeah, I think when you think about it that way, it's like, no, I'm gonna get some for me
yeah.
as well. So if you could think back on the time that you've been doing title insurance, has there ever been a file that you could not get cleared?
Um, there have been a couple that I can think of offhand that title issues so was so it's I don't want to describe it as I couldn't clear it, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
just that the cost and time for the parties to the transaction just didn't
It didn't make.
it didn't make sense for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, curative work sometimes can be costly. It can be time consuming,
Yeah.
and some buyers don't have 90 days to wait uh, for you know you to locate a long lost relative who
Mm-hmm.
nobody in the family's heard from, right? And if you can't locate that person, that means you got to go to court, right? We all know that anything in court takes time,
Yeah.
and you know anything in court costs money, and a lot of folks don't have the time or the resources to sort of fight through that process. So there've been a couple like that where there was so many moving parts that a buyer decided like, hey, I just don't want to deal
Yeah.
with it.
I understand
Yeah,
that because it's also a sense of like uncertainty because sometimes it may be 30 days, but then it's 60, 90, 120. So they may be like, no, thank you.
yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
move on to the next one. Can you get title insurance post closing?
So um, the short answer to that is yes.
Okay.
You can purchase title insurance. It's sort of an a la carte process, but title insurance underwriters are like notoriously picky in reviewing that, right? Because
Okay.
the presumption is right is if you didn't get it at the time you acquired it,
Why are you getting it
but if and you want it now,
now? Mm-hmm.
that likely means something is wrong with the
Mm-hmm.
title, right?
Okay.
And so we are as examiners, as title companies, we are often instructed, hey, you got to go through this title with
Mm-hmm.
a fine tooth comb. The person requesting title insurance has got to sign all kind of affidavits, and I mean it can be done right, but it is a much more difficult process than
Mm-hmm.
if it is issued at the time
At
of
closing.
acquisition.
Okay. So
Yeah,
moral of the story is get it at
get
closing.
it up front, get it while you can.
Okay. Yeah, it's totally worth it. Okay. So I do have one quick question for you.
What's that?
Okay, so we talked about title insurance and the importance of it, what a title actually is, and what it means to real estate versus any other thing. As a title attorney, because you've done successions and wills, and is there any other thing you think a buyer or even a seller should know when it comes to the legal paperwork of ownership that is not talked about enough?
So, uh, first thing is don't take shortcuts, right?
Okay.
Don't, particularly for a buyer, particularly if a lender's not involved, don't just take somebody's word for the fact that this is a family property.
Mm-hmm.
We've never had any issues. I can't tell you how often I get calls from buyers um, who purchase properties from folks who they say they know the property. Turns out there's a tax lien that's getting ready to move beyond the redemption period. One of the heirs to a property didn't sign something they should have signed. So I would say if you're investing in acquisition or acquiring a home, don't take anybody's word for it, right?
Okay.
You do your independent due diligence. And for sellers, right, I think one of the things I say is, hey, we've got to exercise some patience sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, because not every buyer is similarly situated, right? Where you may, if particularly if you sell often, you may have a buyer who's ready to get busy and close in
Mm-hmm.
30 days,
Yeah.
right? And you may have a buyer that is another buyer who requires a little bit more patience, right? But that, I think one of the things, and look, sellers are in the business of making money, right? But I think the sellers who, some of the sellers we work with often, I think they strike a perfect balance of realizing that it's not just about the money, right? It's about
Mm-hmm.
affording, some folks to be able to acquire assets to help build their futures.
Yeah. I mean, this is a lot. It feel like
Look, I tell the title side of things is not sexy, right?
I
It is dense.
don't know. My house being clear and free and sexy to me.
Uh,
You not coming to take my
but
house is
it's
sexy to
but
me.
it's not exciting subject matter as I often say, but it's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is important to at least have a working understanding of sort of um, what such an integral part of your home buying process,
Yeah.
what they do, and sort of what you should expect from
Yeah. I agree. Well, in case anybody else needs to get clear title insurance, successions, wills, can you tell them how they can find you, how they can work with Infinity Title?
well, they can find us. I'm supposed to say I'm not a social media guy, but I'm supposed to tell everybody that Infinity underscore Nola
Mm-hmm.
is where we can be found on Instagram.
Okay.
www.infinitynola.com is the
Mm-hmm.
website.
Okay.
You can reach us at info@infinitynola.com, and that's infinity the word, not the car.
Okay. Okay.
INFINITYNOLA.com.
And you're wearing branded material,
Yes,
so
branded material
that was on
right here.
purpose. I see what you did. I got to get me a realty podcast and then a realtor, and put some patches on
So
here.
I wear it, as you know, most of the time when you
Yes,
come, if any day but a Thursday, right, you'll see me in an Infinity polo or one of
you're
these
right.
polos. So,
Yes, I gotta up my
hey
branded
man,
game. So, but I want to thank you for coming. I know you think that it's not important, not, and you know it's important, but not sexy. But I think it's very, very important to the process, and I think it's important that people understand what it means, so they're not jumping to a deal that sounds too good to be true and finding out that it
mm-hmm.
is because it's not clear, it's not owned, or there's somebody else that has partial ownership in it. So thank you for sitting down with me and my audience. And of course, you guys, I want you to continue to email us, write, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Giving Realty Podcast. Follow us on IG. It's Giving Realty Podcast. And you can DM us if you have questions, if there are other experts that you want to see and hear from, or if there's just subject matters you want us to cover on the show. We got you. We're going to give you all the realty in realty. Until next time.